Top picks from Reuters Breakingviews today. Stripping Fred Goodwin of his knighthood shows it's not just bank bonuses that are subject to clawback. We'll find out exactly what Breakingviews means by that. Nomura improves, but investors will be looking for more. And Intesa heralds peripheral funding thaw. Whatever that means, yeah. With me is Peter Larson. Sorry, we're just taking the headlines and putting those up so we can. It gives you an opportunity to explain them.
That's what I'm here for.
Fred Goodwin. Anyone would think you feel sorry for this guy.
It's very hard to feel sorry for Fred Goodwin. It's very hard, but I think the principle here is problematic. So. What's happened is essentially we're now 3.5 years after RBS got into trouble. For political reasons, the government has basically, because what the government was trying to do, they were trying to deflect attention from the row over the current chief executive of RBS and his bonus. They basically said, "Oh well, let's get rid of Fred Goodwin's knighthood. We'll sort of direct the anger onto Fred Goodwin again." And of course, what's happened is that Fred Goodwin has lost his knighthood, but it hasn't helped. It hasn't stopped the row over Stephen Hester's bonus, and he's had to give it up anyway.
I mean, I think, and you make this point. Yes, he was incompetent, but he wasn't a criminal. And doing this puts him in the same bracket as frauds, traitors, and murderous dictators.
Yeah. Well, and I think the broader point here is also that, the government clearly needs, they're going to need to have to offer bank executives something to motivate them other than money. I mean, what are you going to do to get someone to run RBS? So one of the things you can do is say to them,
you might get a knighthood in the future. Or you think that is
absolutely.
Really?
It's a huge motivation.
Well, you know these guys better than I do.
Absolutely, it's a very big motivation.
So you're saying if you take away that carrot, that knighthood carrot, we're not going to get the right caliber of people stepping up to these jobs. That's the sorry state now. I think
it's a surprisingly effective way. Non-cash way of motivating people to do good things in Britain. It is surprising how many people will work hard for a knighthood. And if you can, if you're the government, look at Stephen Hester, who's just given up his £1 million bonus. Yeah. The government could have said, or may well be saying, look, just do your national service for a few years, turn this bank around, you won't get paid very much, but at the end of it, we'll make you Sir Stephen. But he's now probably looking at that and saying, well, you give me the title, but what's to say you don't take it away from me again when the situation changes?
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see. I like that line actually. Your last line. If a knighthood can be annulled on a whim, is it really worth so much? So it is a good point. All right. Let's talk about Nomura. Corporate finance looked pretty good for Nomura. The market's been bad. We've talked about Jesse Batal leaving as well. It's not overall not that bad for Nomura.
No, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, given what's been going on inside and outside, the numbers could have been a lot worse in the last quarter. But it's not good enough. So even though they bucked the trend on corporate finance, I think their corporate finance revenues were up when the market was down, and their fixed income held steady where a lot of their rivals were down. The fact is they're still making whatever it is, 3% return on equity annualized over the year. It's not good enough. I mean, it's okay. You can say, well, Morgan Stanley isn't doing much better, and Goldman isn't doing much better, and there are lots of other banks that are struggling with this. But Nomura is at the margins of this business. It has a smaller market share, and therefore is going to find it harder to make a return in the sort of the new world. And that's really the challenge. And the investors who are looking at this will say, okay, but if you want us to if you want to stick with this business and trying to be an investment bank and have a reasonably global platform, you're going to have to do a lot better.
Okay. Intesa is the final piece. This senior unsecured bond issue. I mean, it is a good sign. It's a good sign that the ECB's moves are working to a degree. Intesa's the new CEO, right? Who was in Davos?
Yeah, there's a new CEO. That's right. But it's basically it's an unsecured bond issue by an Italian bank. We haven't had one of those since July, I think. So that's a good sign. But and it is, as you say, it's partly because the ECB is providing 3-year liquidity, and this is 18 months, and so the investors are basically who've been going nowhere near unsecured debt of Italian banks now willing to say, okay, we can buy this because we can see that in 18 months the chances of us not getting repaid are pretty slim. The problem is it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So they're paying whatever it is, 279 basis points over sort of the mid swaps, which is much higher than weaker banks in stronger countries like France and Germany are having to pay for their debt. And if you carry on funding at this kind of rate, I mean, this is only €1.5 billion, it's pretty small, but if they carry on having to fund at this kind of rate, then it's very hard to see how they can actually make a positive margin on their loan book. So even though it's a sign of a thaw, I mean, it's still got a long way to go.
Okay, Peter, many thanks for that. Of course, you can find all of those stories on the Breakingviews website and on the Reuters wire. If you want to watch our US show every day, 12:30 Eastern, 17:30 GMT, I'm Axel Threlfall. This is Reuters.